Hey everybody, welcome back to the Y Project. Today we are here with Mr. Henry, who was one of my teachers growing up in school. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. For those of you who, well, most of the people probably know who you are, but do you want to introduce yourself just in case?
Sure. I'm Eric Henry. I teach junior high science. I taught high school science for quite a while for the first part of my career. And then when we lost a junior high science teacher, um, I ended up taking over that role and gradually transitioned into the junior high. And so I've been there for several years, and I love it there. Uh, there you go.
Yeah, it seems to be a really good fit in the junior high, which is so fun. And I'm glad
It's
you
great.
love it.
It's great.
Yeah, good. Well, tell us about kind of what got you into teaching, how'd you get here, and what's your why? Why do you come to work every day? What motivates you?
Okay. Well, the short answer to that is that when I was figuring out what I wanted to do as I moved into adulthood, I realized that I really wanted to make a positive difference in the world, and teaching public school seemed like the best way to have a direct positive impact on the greatest number of people. So that's the course I chose. As it turns out, though, Um, I love teaching junior high. I love my students and I love science. And I think junior high kids are awesome. Um, they're actually my favorite. They still have this childlike curiosity, but they're also starting to ask bigger questions and understand bigger ideas. And they're learning to recognize substandard ideas and to question things. And that questioning tends to really be genuine. And that makes me smile. Um, as far as science, I've always been drawn to the natural world and especially wild places, and the wilder the better. So, my desire to deeply understand those places is what led me to science. And actually, science has really never been easy for me. It's always been something I've had to work at, um, but it's been well worth the effort, and it opens so many doors of understanding. So, in studying science, um, one of the things we learn is how critically connected we are to nature, to the rest of the planet, to others across the community and the country and the globe. And it shows um, how we depend on and how we're impacted by even the smallest things in nature, which we often take for granted. In fact, actually the reason we're doing this right now is largely because we're being um, impacted all across the globe by a force of nature. And that force, in this case, is a virus, something that technically isn't really even alive. Uh, just a little chunk of DNA packaged in some protein, and yet it's shut down humanity all across the globe. So there's a force of nature. And it's an unfortunate example, but it's a very poignant one right now. Um, and so here we are being impacted by that, but they're all over the place. The climate and the daily weather and the soil we grow our food in, and whether that food grows well, and almost anything else you can think of. We're a part of that. Um, so that's fascinating to me, and it also, through understanding that, it kind of, I think, takes us out of our everyday lives and beyond ourselves and beyond humanity into the more than human world, um, out to the rest of the universe, and helps us understand our place within that, which holds, to me, a richness and depth of reality that includes but also goes beyond humanity. So it brings real clarity to that. Um, in teaching science, I feel like I have the opportunity to bring out a little of that and to introduce students um, to the richness of the world and of the universe. And sometimes I get to see that realization awaken in them, and I get to see the sense of awe that comes from looking beyond those boundaries of their everyday world. I also get to watch students learn to think critically and to start asking astute questions. And I get to help them begin to develop their growing need to understand and to seek what's genuine. And to get to see that feeling of awe start to blossom is really cool. I love seeing that. So when I think about what science tells me about my place in the universe and how I'm a part of it, I don't feel small and weak and insignificant. You know, a lot of people look up at the night sky and they see those stars out there that are huge and far away and realize that we're really tiny and small, and we are, but there's more to it than that. I actually, when I do that, I feel big and important and overcome with this wonder toward all that I'm a part of, and a feeling of connection to it. That provides some kind of empowerment, and so I want other people to have that empowerment as well. And I hope that understanding science allows people to do that. So maybe that's really what it is that I want a world of empowered people everywhere. And I want people to know who they are and where they come from and how they fit in. Because people who are empowered like that can make positive changes in the world. And I want that because I love people and I love the world. And I want others to experience that and to be empowered to act on it. So there it is. That's why I come to work every day and teach junior high science.
That's awesome. Something that I am learning to appreciate more and more about science teachers is that they don't lose their wonder and they keep having it. And I really appreciate that and want to, I admire it in all science teachers, really. I feel like, especially at Mount Baker, we have a lot of teachers who are still curious about the world. You still probably walk by and wonder, like, what is that on the ground, or what kind of plant, or what is that thing in the sky, or whatever. And that's super fun.
I was admiring some lichen growing on our picnic table this morning. And when the department gets together, we do tend to geek out over weird little science questions, but it's really fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that we were talking about with Miss Kuhn on the same project was starting some sort of like Google Classroom, or all of the students could just write in their wonders and keep wondering.
Yeah. Oh, that's really a great idea.
It would be really fun.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Cool.
And I like how you talked about connecting that to like empowering yourself, or like making the world a better place. I hadn't even thought about how those two could connect, and that's a really neat thing to say.
Thank you.
So
I agree. I think it's really important.
It is, totally.
The more we understand, the more empowered we are, and the more we can do with that.
Yep. So for sure. Well, the second part of this project is to just talk about maybe a quick word of encouragement, or maybe a challenge for people to partake in during this time. So what do you have for us? I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, so you asked about quotes and stuff, and the first thing I thought of, which I thought was, I thought was kind of interesting, was Ernest Hemingway, who, for those who don't know, Ernest Hemingway was American author in the 20th century. He wrote a lot of novels, wrote poetry. He was especially well known for his short stories. And I don't think a lot of people are that familiar with Hemingway anymore, but he was a super influential author. And toward the end, I believe, of his novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls, the protagonist is on a monologue, and he starts it, anyway, somewhere in the monologue, he says, "The world is a fine place and worth the fighting for." And that's what immediately popped into my head, because I think the world is a fine place. I think I'd change it though. I think I'd say, the world is a fine place and worth the caring for. And I think this is an especially important time to remember that. Caring is actually kind of difficult. And sometimes I hear people get exasperated with something and say, I don't care. And my response to that often is, I care. And by saying that and owning that, I hope that it makes them feel like they have permission to realize how much they do care. And that it's perfectly fine to care and be frustrated and exasperated and overwhelmed, and that that's actually, those are feelings that go along with caring. Like, we have those feelings because we care. If we didn't care, we wouldn't feel any of that. So I guess in this time when we have to be, sheltering in place, I think we also need to embrace how important it is to care for ourselves and one another, and that by caring and acting on that, we can find the patience to persevere and come out on the other side and keep going in our lives, and hopefully be a little better through the discomfort and also through knowing that we cared. So that's what I have. The world is a fine place and worth the caring for.
I like that. That's a good food for thought
Yeah.
quote. I appreciate that. Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for being here, and thanks for participating in this project. And we're happy that you are at Mount Baker.
You bet. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.